A very good morning and a very warm welcome to the 2024 SARB Payments Conference under the theme of Shaping the Future of Payments for South Africa. To speak on the topic of the South African payments landscape, its history, its present moment, and what it might look like in 2025 and beyond, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome our host, the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Governor Lesetja Kganyago. Let's give him a big round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, Nosipo. Good morning, everyone. And I think that what Nosipo did was to do the things that I avoid doing. So she has done them for me. So I dispense with protocols. I promise you, today I will not talk about any basis points. My job this morning is to welcome you to the 2024 Payments Conference. To set the stage for our discussion over the next 2 days, I want to take a brief look at the past to assess our progress in modernizing payments. Then I'll turn to the present, where broader society still relies heavily on central bank money, otherwise known as cash. Even as people in peer countries are adopting digital payments at scale. Finally, looking forward, I will discuss our payments ecosystem and modernization efforts and our strong preferences as the custodians of the national payment system to reduce cash reliance. I'll start with the history. At one time, South Africa was a global payments leader. For instance, we were early adopters of one of the world's first fast payment systems, real-time clearing. This was back in 2006. The introduction of the debit check system for verifying debit orders in 2019 was also a world first. But the frontier keeps moving. As our Vision 2025 strategy document set out, there are structural changes in payment systems underway. It is vital for South Africa's competitiveness that we keep ahead of these trends. This is also an area where we can provide real contributions to financial inclusion and growth. Often, I am in the position of explaining that the SARB makes its main contribution to supporting inclusive growth by providing price and financial stability. And that we need to keep doing what we are doing rather than making radical changes. But this is not the case with payments. In wholesale payments, that is large value payments, typically between central banks, you would probably say we need to keep doing what we were doing with incremental improvements such as adopting the ISO 20022 standards. But in the retail space, there is a paradigm shift underway which is full of promise but also full of challenges, not least the danger of falling behind our peers. This brings me to the present and the problem with cash. It's exciting that we can now make payments with our phones or even our smartwatches. But as our payment survey reminded us, for most South Africans, cash is still king. People view it as easy to use and as the cheapest payment option available. It is the most used payment method in our survey. Cardless payments were far down the list. I am proud of our cash. After all, my signature is on the notes. And it's a symbol of trust giving public access to central bank money, a liability on our balance sheet. But as we noted in our digital payments roadmap, published a few months ago, South Africans are over-reliant on cash. Even though most South Africans have bank accounts now, many still withdraw all their money as soon as it lands in the account. This means missing out on the safety and convenience of transacting digitally. The fact is, cash is just not that efficient. Whether it's finding ATMs, providing correct change, dealing with transport logistics and security, or fostering payments innovation, cash is more limited than digital payments. There is also evidence that cash disempowers women by making it harder to manage the family finances, including child support grants. Strong reliance on cash is not optimal for society. That said, change is happening. For several years now, we have seen little or no growth in the total demand for notes and coins. Last year, notes and coin contracted by 0.8%, the largest fall in records going back to 1960. Historically, cash growth has broadly followed growth in nominal GDP, but this trend broke down after COVID. If cash was still growing as fast as it did last decade, we would have an extra 60 billion rand or so of notes and coins in circulation. This missing money shows a changing payment landscape. Cash may still be king, but the crown is slipping. The major reason for this is the availability of better payment alternatives. I have already mentioned cardless payments, technologies which allow you to leave your wallet at home and pay with your device. Another interesting example is PayShap, the digital retail payment system which launched last year. PayShap adoption has been quite fast, but it is not yet a revolution in retail payments. Other countries are further ahead. Two famous examples are India's UPI system and Brazil's Pix. These allow instant low-cost payments using simple tools like a cell phone number or a QR code instead of an expensive point-of-sale terminal. They have quickly become ubiquitous payment technologies in these economies, and they are inclusive. For example, you can use Pix to buy a drink from an informal vendor or to pay for a taxi ride. You even see beggars in the street asking for digital payments. In other words, these systems are doing what cash does and doing it better. It's true, we also have these payment methods in South Africa, but they are less widespread. This brings me to the outlook. How do we move from cash to digital? To drive this change, we have recently embarked on a payments ecosystem modernization program. This is the largest and most ambitious initiative by the South African Reserve Bank in the payment space since the launch of SAMOS over 30 years ago. The heart of it is building out a public payments utility that provides digital payment infrastructure. As such project must have security measures and fraud prevention at its heart. And as we are reminded by the recent scandal around grants being stolen from post-bank accounts, safety is a non-negotiable for payments. We also intend to make inclusiveness a foundational principle. This will be a payment system for all South Africans, rural or urban, rich or poor, not a product for one or another niche. Then we need to think about how we work and modernize existing systems. We are not going to be rebuilding everything from scratch. After all, we already have good payments infrastructure in South Africa, but we are living through a paradigm shift in payments, and not every legacy system will be fit for purpose in the future. Creativity and design are much about what you take away as what you add. We call this the maximize and rationalize principle. We also need to find the right balance between bringing everyone on board and moving forward. Our philosophy is to have a bias to action. If we consult everyone but do not deliver, and if South Africa is one of the last countries to get fast, cheap, inclusive retail digital payments, we would have failed South Africans. Make no mistake, we want creative collaboration, and we admire and value the talent of the many participants in this ecosystem. But we care most of all about results, and we will work with coalitions of the willing, so to say, to get there. Or rather, let me say, we shall build winning coalitions. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring this to a close. For centuries, central banks had provided wholesale and retail payment services, while for large values but lower volumes, retail for smaller values and larger volumes. Sometimes, central banks have used monopoly models, for instance, with issuing notes and coins or running wholesale payment systems. At other times, they have participated alongside other service providers, frequently playing an oversight or coordination role in a system where payment systems are mostly provided privately. It is always difficult to know exactly where to draw the line between what should be done privately and what should be done by central banks, which of course have a public good mission. There are some natural monopolies, like large value settlement, where central bank accounts seem to be indispensable. There are also good reasons private issuance of notes and coins collapsed, and countries tend to have a single national issuer of cash, the central bank, rather than having the nodes of different institutions compete, as often happened in previous centuries. To be clear, if you compete with us and you print your own bank notes and coins that look like ours, we will get you into jail. That said, one of the big problems with monopolies is that they tend to be unimaginative. They don't invest much in innovation. Perhaps for this reason, national payment ecosystems have often landed on a model where there is a private participation in payments to foster innovation, while central banks deliver stability and safety. That said, central banks also often play a role catalyzing change. As the SARP, we are in a curious position currently that we are solely responsible for producing banknotes and coins, the most popular retail payment format, but we want to innovate ourselves out of this profitable position. And we are so insistent that we monopolize the digital payments alternatives. We are not insistent that we monopolize the digital payments alternative. We are just insistent that we as a country move with the paradigm shift and reap its benefits. There has been a fashion for central bank digital currencies lately, but frankly, the most successful retail payment initiatives by central banks have been with new payment systems rather than new kinds of central bank liabilities. Brazil and India didn't need central bank digital currencies to develop the world's two most used retail digital systems. These were cases where central banks catalyzed change, and this created many opportunities for the private sector to innovate using the new platform. Fundamentally, I hope we will approach the new payments paradigm as a landmark opportunity to make payments in South Africa safer, faster, cheaper, and more inclusive. South Africans expect no less from us. Thank you very much.
Governor, before I let you go, I promised our audience that this is going to be a conversation. I think it's a good place for us to maybe put one question to you before we release you from the stage. One of the things that you've spoken about, and I think it's been a consistent thread, of course, is a change, whether it's change in technologies, whether it's change in just how the future of the payments landscape is going to come about. Question to you is, what about the behavioral mindset and the behavioral change? How do we ensure that the ecosystem supports South Africans to move towards a cashless society so that the technology doesn't run ahead of where the society is?
I mean, one of the things that we value is partnership. And I think that in this journey, it is important to define what the public sector does, in this case being the central bank, and what the private sector does. In this room, there is a lot of innovation. And there are people who would tell us about creative payments that they have for spaza shops, for informal traders, and all of that. What is needed is a backbone that is going to be supportive of that ecosystem. And that backbone is what we intend to build in a public utility that is serving all South Africans and would allow the creative minds to be at play. We have we created an innovation hub in the central bank. But by God, central banks are not particularly known for innovation. We prefer to keep things boring. So we defined our role as we will create the space for innovators to come and play. We will help guide them through regulations. We will create a sandbox for them to come and play there and play around with their ideas and take them to the market. One thing that is clear is that the central bank does not have the reach that the players in the ecosystem have to reach the South African public, and you must let those creative juices flow, and then we are going to see the results.
Thank you very much, Governor. Ladies and gentlemen, our host, the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, thank you very much.